Okay, everybody, it is time for a review, and I'm recording this after about 5 hours of baking. And I mean like cooking, not the other kind of baking. Haha. Anyway, uh, dubious tiredness aside, I am here today to review Queen, and getting a little tongue-tied because I did want to address something before we get into this review. First of all, I will be doing the Joker review pretty quickly after, but I'm also going to take a look at Ibarra from the standpoint of a JP player and where I think she could fit in on JP and whether or not I would spend the resources on her. So I am going to do a little thing on Ibarra later, but this is Queen's video, so enough chat about the character we're not here to talk about. Let's talk about the character we are here to talk about, and that is Queen. And in all honesty, Queen is one of my more favorite characters from Persona 5. I like all the characters from Persona 5, but Queen is one who just kind of kicks ass. Makoto is a character with a lot of personality, a lot of strength, a lot of she's a well-rounded character, and I liked her story, and I like her as a person in the game, and I'm really happy that we do have this opportunity to have this character in the game. Now, that being said, whether or not this character is good or not is a different story, and one we're going to talk about today. So first of all, talking about Queen, let's show off her limit burst for a second before we get into it. Just so we can get that out of the way, because I am going to go in much more depth today about everything. So, really cool looking limit burst, just like a Persona, just like in the game Persona 5. And I have to say, that is something that I really like. Thankfully, her animations as well are really good, but you know, it's fine. Let's switch over because there's a very specific test that I think most people are going to want to see, and that's what we are going to be doing today. So thankfully we do have the friend 120 here, and we're just going to be showing off, well, let's even just put her on a mage team right now, because I want to talk about the way this character is statted. First of all, let's get into the basics. Thunder Elemental, 90 cost, 3 move, 1 jump. Main job is basically the what is it, La Popes, or the High Priestess. Jobs are secondary, and third jobs are Gunner and Fighter. Pretty nice combination. I actually like this a fair bit, especially in the Thunder element, because in the Thunder element we are essentially having a really nice. There's quite a few gunners, there's quite a few physical DPSers, there's quite a few magical DPSers, and the best thing about Queen is that she fits into any Thunder party, and that is something that I don't get to say with a lot of units, because you kind of want either physical or magical, you want to focus on one thing or the other, you don't want to necessarily focus on both a lot of the time, but Queen just fits everywhere, and that is a big thing. Before we continue on with the conversation about her. Now, taking a look at, first of all, let's talk about her primary weapon. This thing is just amazing. It's amazingly statted. This is a critical version, so you're even getting a critical bonus. It powers up fists, it powers up magic attack, and that is what we are looking for here, amongst other things. Also, talking about her TMR, which is pretty amazing. A really high statted magic item with some defense and HP that also gives an ability of spirit penetration up by 20 for 3 turns, not only to her but to others as well, so very useful on a mage team. And I have to say, it's just a really nice TMR. I think it is definitely one of the more valuable ones because it could give characters who need more spirit penetration, but it can also do it on multiple units. As for Espers, I think this is one of the more versatile units that you can potentially throw. She's somewhat tanky, so you could throw like a tank Esper on her and get her a little more physically brawly. I think you could also, Ramu is the obvious one because just the mage and thunder damage properties that you can get here. And then if you're not just looking at Ramu, you could also be looking at Lakshmi or the Only Fist Esper. There's quite a few options for this character in terms of how you build her. And taking a look at her stats, you can build her to be very, very focused on physical. You can focus her entirely on magical, like we have here. Or you can focus her on being in the middle, which is a really cool combination. Now, her speed is not incredible from what I've basically seen. If you look at her in comparison versus other characters in this party, she's a little on the slower side. Thankfully, though, her limit burst does give her a really big speed boost, which is nice. A 42% speed boost for 3 turns, and as we'll talk about in a second, it's actually really easy to achieve. Also, her limit burst decreases lightning resistance, so on a boss or any kind of like PvE content where you're fighting a single enemy, definitely a Thunder Team enabler, which is quite amazing. Alright, but continuing on, we talked about the limit burst now. Let's show off resistances. Now, resistance-wise, very obvious the way that we have her built. She is just weak to Oberon. Any Earth Spear will be a big danger. I think Earth Elemental characters somewhat as well, but as you can see, her resistances across the board, given this build, are actually pretty solid. I don't really have any complaints about them. I just think that it is generally good. Alright, as for her abilities, let's get into her jobs. Fighter, she has a way to restore HP and increase her max HP, as well as defense. It gives her a little more brawliness. She has the attack that also decreases damage and increases by 8% each time she receives damage as well. Works nice for this whole brawly thing she has going. She has move to the target and deal damage. She has restore her own HP, and she can increase strike attack and defense penetration. Fighter basically is her big enabler for being a physical Thunder Fist character. Now, of course, the real problem with any Fist user is the fact that we don't have an Esper that super, really helps at this point. We really do need a UR Fist Esper at some point, as well as some vision cards too. So that is a consideration, but I have to say that Fighter brings a lot of survivability to her and is kind of just a nice little sub-job for her. Also, conversely, however, Gunner is also a nice little sub-job, as Gunner brings to her some unity along with Cloud and along with other, Thunder range characters too, which is great. Talking about her Gunner, she can increase missile attack and range for herself and allies. She has the blind attack, she has immobilize attack, she can increase her critical rate for herself and allies, something that Cloud would particularly be happy to synergize with. She has the Beast Killer with piercing damage, and she has a chance to inflict disable, so her Gunner skills are actually really nice, if for nothing else than giving her status effects and potentially synergizing with other Thunder Elemental characters, which is something we want. Now, as for her main job, first of all, talking about the sub part of it, and a really cool thing, her actual beginning, if you take a look at the symbol on her job right here, it's actually her persona, and it's been upgraded. Originally, it's just her mask, and it changes once you get her into EX. I thought that was a really nice touch. Alright, talking about this, on her sub job, she can dispel auto revive on a single unit, which is usually good enough. Also, she has a restore HP ability. This one is restoring medium and medium both for their own type of thing. They each have casting time, which is a little bit of a bummer. But other than that, nice to have as an option. I think really if I was building Queen at this point, I would definitely consider Fighter over anything, just because I like the survivability, and I like having access to damage, physical damage, as well as magical damage, because it makes it really hard for your opponent to build just one way, or if your opponent either builds purely physical or purely magical for a tank, well, then Queen could potentially leverage either side, so that's just a little bit interesting. I'm not convinced at this point, because I haven't done enough testing, but I do think it's a cool idea. All right, now talking about the rest of her job, the main part of it, the stuff you're always going to have, her big job level 25 ability basically reduces healing power on targets, also has a 200% mod on it, and it is AoE. 3 uses, it's pretty nice. I wouldn't say that it's insane, but given that it is a good modifier, it's AoE, and it does something as well, it's pretty good value. And it has no casting time, but it is a physical attack. You're going to notice that some of these are magical and some of these are physical. All right, talking about her own buff though, this one increases her spirit by 20 for 3 turns and a 50% chance that counter doesn't activate for 3 turns for self, which is interesting. Basically, it's a little bit of a Hail's Mary, protects you against magical attacks better, but not against physical attacks. Now, her counter is basically evasion to physical damage at a 15% chance. What I like about this is you're trading off one for the other, so it's good in very specific situations. Whether the AI is good enough to figure it out is a different story and probably not the case. But hey, I actually do like it for the most part. Now, the rest of her abilities, this one, for instance, is a physical attack one, AoE, increases accuracy on herself, so helps against evasion characters, 165 mod, and has a chance to stun too. Not incredible, but since she is potentially also a magical character, if you're running high faith on this character, I think you have a pretty good chance to get some status effects off, which is an interesting little benefit. As for this one, this AoE does give AoE resistance for herself and allies of 15 and increases attack and magic by 40% for self. Powers up both of her damage type abilities, really nice. Also benefits some allies. It's a good little support skill, if not being the range, being a little limited. Now, as for her other 2 ones, her basic one does get an upgrade into her EX, giving her a decrease of magic on an enemy, decreasing spirit on the enemy by 30 for 3 turns, which is a pretty big defense decrease. Sorry, spirit, magical defense decrease, and a 141% mod. Really nice damage off of that. And her last ability is another AoE, and thankfully this has a little bit more versatility to it. Does have a casting time, but it breaks barriers for targets while dealing 185% mod. Now, I've talked about the counter that I think is really interesting, which is her own. I think it's the only one you're going to be running. And as for her support, interestingly, she only gets one specific class support. Does give her defense penetration of 40 for physical, as well as a 24% attack and magic boost. As for which one you run for her secondary, it's really up to you. This one's running HP and attack up off of the fighter one, but you could run the accuracy on fighter if you're dealing with evasion characters. You could run missile attack or range up if you're using her ranger abilities. So I think there's a lot of versatility in how you build Queen and what you use Queen for too, which is really cool because characters with a lot of flexibility that are interesting because they are different from every other characters usually can find pretty good niches. Like it's not necessarily just Celeste level of good. Oh shoot, I brought the wrong one. All right, well, I'm just going to answer the question right now. This will just give us a better idea for what Queen's magic damage is. It's fine, don't worry about it. If people really want to see it, I'll show it. But if people are wondering about the thing with Celeste, now Celeste is kind of a pretty usual problem on the JP side. She's a really good tank, and despite what a lot of global are saying, she actually can be built as a really good physical tank as well. But Persona music aside, let's just pass a few turns and kind of get Queen here so I can show some of the benefits. like right here, this is the thing that I think is really notable. Her AP start is incredibly high, meaning that she can actually get away with a limit burst right off the get-go. Why is this important? Well, it's essentially high damage dealing. It decreases thunder resistance on your main target that you're going to be attacking. You think about raids and whatnot, this is just incredibly useful, and it gives her a big agility boost, meaning that she will get her follow-up turn a fair bit quicker. And now let's just kind of go in here, and we're going to show some damage against some of our other characters. As you can see with Moore, as you can see with Yuna, as you can see with Garvel, and if we can just turn the camera, there we go. So a lot of her attacks are actually really powerful. Not necessarily the most amazing, because one of the problems, she does have casting time, but she can actually be pretty versatile in how she takes on her opponents. And this one, for example, maybe not even the best one or the best example, but you look here at what we're dealing against other mages, and we're dealing pretty darn good damage. So let's go over here and continue to punch stuff. And just to show some counter damage against Queen, you know, she actually does have some survivability even against high level characters that are dealing a fair amount of damage. And again, I think that if you want to build her as tankier than this current build is, you definitely could do it. But even like a strong character such as Anniversary Glassy, or let's just go here and show against Moore, or if we were going to go with Black Witch Helena. Alright, Black Witch Helena wins out of all of them. But she does put up a pretty good fight against a lot of mages, and that might actually put her as to better in arena. One thing that I do want to note before we continue is that I'll also put up this, which is my general summary of it. But, and it should be noted that she's a physical DPS, but it didn't quite fit in there. The only other thing that I think is really worth talking about in all of this, besides the casting time thing, which is a little disappointing because it would have been nice to have some more support in her master ability to essentially fix that. Ultima has rated her as being just a pretty low tier character as far as they're concerned, and I'm just going to go ahead and say that it's incredibly presumptuous at this point. I think that she is really capable of dishing out a lot of damage, good support, and being good in other things besides just like specific content where you choose. For instance, if you're going up in against a PvP kind of situation, how is your opponent supposed to necessarily know how you built your queen? You could be built more towards physical, more magical. I mean, here we were built, we ran with a magical based party, so that kind of upped her magical DPS and decreased her physical DPS, so her damage could have been even better in some cases here. Queen has an amazing weapon, an amazing kit, and some really nice flexibility with basically any Thunder unit that currently exists and will exist in the future. The only thing that I think is also another big detriment to her is the fact that I am not convinced at this point that she will have not support, but like obviously fist users are always that kind of thing. Shoot, I kind of just lost my train of thought. This is embarrassing. This doesn't usually happen to me. There was definitely a thought I had about Queen to sum it up. Like, I think that she can be a little bit of a mystery, very flexible, and while being a jack of all trades, she actually does end up fairly doing really well. I remember what it was now. The thing that I am 100% convinced about, though, is that not getting her into EX and really getting her up to 120 is a big mistake. She needs to be into her 120. She really needs all the potential, all of the horsepower that she can get behind her, because really, Fist just doesn't have the support, and we're not sure when Fist is going to get the support. But she's a capable damage dealer. Her animations are awesome. It's amazing to see Queen in War of the Visions, let alone a Final Fantasy game, because Persona is an awesome RPG, and I think that Queen is absolutely awesome too. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this character. Hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.